The sky over Cedar Ridge burned crimson at dawn, the kind of light that made the mountains look alive. Frost glittered on the split-rail fence as Garrett Holloway poured black coffee from an enamel pot, the steam curling into the cold Montana air. To the east, cattle shifted in the pasture, their breath rising in pale clouds. The sound of leather creaking beneath his boots and the distant call of a meadowlark were the same sounds his great-grandfather heard when he built this ranch in 1887. This was Holloway land, 2,400 acres of stubborn, wind-carved beauty and one 12-acre spring-fed lake in its heart. That lake was more than water. It was where Garrett's grandmother shelled peas in the evenings, where his daughter learned to swim, where 4 generations' ashes rested under smooth river stones. The kind of place no one could put a price tag on, though someone was sure as hell trying. He heard them before he saw them, the low growl of tires on gravel, engines too polished for ranch country. 3 SUVs appeared over the ridge, headlights cutting through mist, followed by the sharp wail of a siren. Garrett set his coffee down on the porch rail, pulse steady but jaw tight. Visitors at 6 a.m. were never here to shake hands. The convoy rolled to a stop, gravel spitting under chrome rims. Door slammed. A county deputy stepped out first, hand resting on his belt. Not hostile, but not friendly either. Behind him, framed by the open door of a pearl-white Range Rover, stood Belle Thornwick, president of the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association. Her sunglasses reflected the sun as it broke over the hills, turning her into a silhouette with lipstick. "Morning, Mr. Holloway," the deputy called, voice careful. "Got a complaint about trespassing. On my own land," Garrett thought, stepping off the porch. "That's interesting. Who's filing?" Belle smiled like she'd already won. "We've had multiple reports of you blocking community access to the lake." Her voice was sweet poison. "I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding." Garrett's eyes flicked to the 3rd SUV. A young man leaned against the hood, designer jacket spotless, phone angled just right to capture the confrontation. Tucker Thornwick, 22, all teeth and entitlement, the kind of kid who thought Montana was just a filter for his social media empire. Garrett didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. That lake isn't community property. It's Holloway land. Been that way for over a century. Belle stepped closer, holding up a manila folder like it was a royal decree. These historical records say otherwise. The townships had shared recreational rights since before you were born. Garrett glanced at the papers. Perfect stamps, crisp signatures, all too new to smell like history. He'd seen better forgeries when his daughter Skylar tried to excuse herself from school in 8th grade. But instead of arguing, he smiled slow. "I'll review those with my attorney." He took out his phone and snapped a photo of every page. Belle's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, just enough to confirm what he already knew. "Surely that's unnecessary," she said, voice tightening. "We're all neighbors here." Behind her, Tucker called out, "Don't worry, Mom. I'm already streaming this. People need to know how this guy's hoarding a public lake." Garrett didn't bother looking at the camera. His great-grandfather's words came back like wine through dry grass. Never show anger on your own porch. Let the other man think you're soft while you gather the rope to hang him with his own lies. The deputy shifted uncomfortably. "Look, Garrett, I just have to file the report." "That's fine," Garrett said, eyes never leaving Belle's. "Paper trails can be useful." The Range Rover door shut with a hollow thud. The SUVs turned around in a spray of gravel and diesel fumes, rolling back toward the subdivision with its identical mansions and manicured lawns. Belle's reflection lingered in Garrett's mind. Perfect hair, perfect smile, the kind of woman who thought barbed wire and family graves were just inconvenient obstacles to her son's latest money scheme. Garrett walked back to the porch, picked up his coffee, now cold, and stared out at the lake shimmering in the morning light. He'd been alone on this land since his daughter left for college, but it had never felt lonely until now. Belle Thornwick had just declared war on a century of Holloway legacy. And Garrett Holloway wasn't the type to lose on his own ground. Garrett Holloway had seen prairie fires creep slow over the ridge, the kind that look harmless until the wind shifts and the whole valley glows red. Belle Thornwick's trespass complaint felt the same way. Harmless at first glance, deadly if ignored. Within a week, whispers spread through Whispering Pines like a sickness. Garrett heard them at the feed store, at church, even on his daughter Skylar's college group chat. The rancher's unstable. He's threatening families. He's blocking kids from swimming in their lake. Belle had turned a forged folder into gospel truth, and she knew exactly which fears to feed. The next knock at Garrett's door wasn't a deputy. It was Bob Henderson, his neighbor for 3 years. Descentman, helped pull calves during last spring's blizzard. But now Bob stood on Garrett's porch like a stranger, hat twisting in his hands. "Garrett, HOA wants us to file a joint nuisance complaint. About your cattle. The smell. Early morning noise." Garrett stared at him. "The same cattle you've helped me round up more than once?" Bob winced. "Belle says it's affecting property values." He didn't meet Garrett's eyes. "Look, I'm just passing the message." That night, Garrett walked the fence line with a flashlight, the beams slicing through the dark. The Holloway Lake glittered under a thin moon, silent except for the soft lapping of water against stone. His grandmother's laughter seemed to ride the breeze, a reminder of evenings when the family gathered here, safe from the world. He clenched the flashlight harder. Belle Thornwick wasn't just trying to steal land. She was trying to erase the history etched into it. Then came the security footage. The cameras Garrett had installed, 8 motion-activated eyes watching every path to the lake, captured Tucker Thornwick in full color, arriving with a film crew and a catering truck. Not a weekend fishing trip, a full production. Garrett poured coffee and watched from his kitchen as Tucker strutted down the shore, shouting over the wind, "Yeah, this is my family's lake. Been coming here since I was a kid. We're charging $300 a head for exclusive Montana wilderness access." Sponsors are loving it. The cameras didn't just show trespassing. They showed trucks tearing ruts in the pasture, beer bottles glinting in the grass, and strangers trampling the cattails where his cattle drank. His prize bull, Augustus, stopped eating normally. Livestock don't lie. They feel danger long before men admit it exists. 2 mornings later, Garrett woke to silence where his pump house should have been humming. The old water system had gone dead, electrical lines severed, control panel smashed. $8,000 in repairs, and a full day hauling water by hand to keep the herd alive in 90-degree heat. The cameras caught only shadows, hooded figures, but the tire tracks matched Tucker's lifted pickup. The sheriff's deputy came out, looked uncomfortable, and left with a shrug. "Not enough evidence for charges," he said. Garrett noticed the way his badge gleamed under subdivision porch lights on the way back. Belle's husband sat on the hospital board with the deputy's wife. Small towns keep long memories and longer deaths. When Skylar called from college, worry in her voice, Garrett softened for the first time in weeks. "Dad, people online are saying you threatened Tucker. There's even a video of him crying about it." Garrett laughed once, a low, bitter sound. If tears could buy integrity, that boy'd be a millionaire. But inside a knot formed. Belle wasn't just attacking his ranch. She was poisoning his name. Contracts with local suppliers started slipping. Old friends crossed the street instead of waving. Lies had weight, and Belle was stacking them like bricks. That night, Garrett sat at his grandfather's old oak desk, the grain worn smooth by decades of calloused hands. He opened the filing cabinet, pulling deeds, water rights patents, survey maps yellowed with age. His grandfather used to say, "The land teaches patience. It also teaches you where to find the truth when liars show up with paper and smiles." In the back of the cabinet, behind dog-eared tax receipts and rusted keys, Garrett found a folder marked in his grandfather's handwriting. Cedar Ridge Service District, 1962. The paper crackled as he opened it. Legal language, official seals, his family ranch listed as the anchor parcel for the entire region's emergency services and municipal oversight. Lines that meant nothing at first glance, until they did. Garrett read it twice, then a third time. His coffee went cold, forgotten beside him. Belle Thornwick thought she could bury him in paperwork. She had no idea she'd just handed him a shovel, and he'd found the soft earth under her feet. The wind over Cedar Ridge carried the metallic smell of coming rain, but Garrett Holloway barely noticed. His eyes stayed fixed on the yellowed legal papers spread across his grandfather's oak desk, as if the words might shift if he looked away. District Administrator, authority to approve or terminate municipal service contracts. It sounded absurd. Garrett was a rancher, not a bureaucrat. Yet the signatures were authentic, the county seal unbroken. In 1962, Montana had created rural service districts to manage police, fire, and utility contracts for far-flung properties. His great-grandfather's ranch, the largest in the area, had been designated the anchor parcel. The power came with the land, and now it belonged to Garrett. Belle Thornwick had spent months weaponizing the county against him. Police calls, nuisance complaints, emergency inspections, and every one of those services was funded mostly by Garrett's own taxes. He paid 60% of the district's budget. In effect, he'd been financing his own persecution. The realization hit like ice water down his back. He wasn't powerless. He'd been holding the keys all along. Still, power alone didn't solve everything. Garrett stared at his reflection in the dusty window. A 45-year-old man with too much sun in his skin, lines cut deep by weather and loss. He looked tired, divorced, alone since Skylar left for college. For the first time, he wondered if Belle's rumors had sunk deeper than gossip. What if people really believed he was dangerous? What if Skylar believed it? The screen door banged, and Pete Morrison, Garrett's accountant and longtime friend, stepped inside without knocking. "Got your message," Pete said, brushing rain off his jacket. "What's so urgent?" Garrett shoved the papers across the desk. "Read this." Pete scanned the documents, eyebrows rising. "Holy hell, Garrett. You're the district supervisor. You can cut off every contract feeding that subdivision." He looked up, grinning like a man holding dynamite. "Belle Thornwick's living on borrowed power, and you're the banker." Before Garrett could answer, the front door opened again. Skylar burst in, her hair damp from the storm. A laptop clutched her chest. "Dad, you're not going to believe this." She set the computer on the desk and pulled up Tucker Thornwick's latest Instagram post, a time-lapse of him building a rustic fishing dock on Holloway land. He's bragging about charging influencers $500 a day for exclusive access. Sponsors are paying him thousands. Garrett felt his jaw tighten. Tucker wasn't just trespassing. He was running a full commercial operation on sacred ground where his grandmother's ashes rested. "Sky, you shouldn't have driven in this weather." "I'm not sitting in a dorm while they tear our name apart," she shot back. "I've been digging." Belle got fired from her last real estate job for falsifying documents. And her husband's bank? Under federal audit. Garrett looked at his daughter, 20 years old, sharp as a knife, her mother's fire in her eyes, and something shifted inside him. This wasn't just about a lake anymore. It was about legacy, about teaching Skylar what Holloways did when someone tried to steal their soul. "Pete," Garrett said slowly, "we're going to need more than proof. We need a plan." By nightfall, the ranch house glowed like a war room. Coffee steamed in mismatched mugs. Pete clicked through 10 years of district financial records, muttering curses under his breath. "Look at this. Security patrols billing $400,000 a year. Market rate is maybe 80. They've been stealing blind." Skylar mapped Belle's network on the wall with sticky notes and red string. HOA board members, shell companies, county officials with suspiciously close ties. Garrett's old friend Sarah McKenzie, now one of the best water rights attorneys in Montana, arrived after midnight. She read the district documents twice, then leaned back with a low whistle. "Garrett, this isn't just leverage. This is a hammer, and you've got nails everywhere." But the real turning point wasn't legal. It was personal. Garrett stepped onto the porch alone, the storm clearing to reveal a sky full of stars. The lake shimmered in the moonlight, peaceful and perfect, as if unaware of the war brewing around it. He thought of his grandfather's voice, rough from years in the saddle. "The land teaches patience." But patience isn't weakness. When someone tries to steal your heritage, you make sure they never do it to anyone else. Garrett took a slow breath. For months, Belle Thornwick had dictated the fight, and he'd played defense. Not anymore. The rancher was awake. And this time, he wasn't just defending the land. He was going to make Belle regret ever stepping foot on it. The first letter went out by certified mail on a clear Tuesday morning. A single page, signed in firm ink. Effective immediately, all Cedar Ridge Rural Service District expenditures require administrator approval. Complete financial records must be submitted within 30 days. Garrett Holloway knew exactly what it meant. So did Belle Thornwick. By Friday, the subdivision buzzed like a kicked hornet nest. Homeowners grumbled about emergency service bills doubling overnight. The HOA had to prepay for police patrols and their beloved enhanced security, really just Belle's brother-in-law's ghost company, vanished in a heartbeat. Belle's response was swift and vicious. She hired a Seattle PR firm specializing in crisis spin. Within days, Facebook lit up with anonymous posts accusing Garrett of animal cruelty, illegal dumping, even domestic violence. A shaky video of Tucker, eyes red with designer tears, claimed Garrett had threatened to make him disappear. Skylar shoved her phone across the kitchen table. "They're calling you a psychopath, Dad. Look at this comment section. People are saying someone needs to stop you before you hurt somebody." Garrett scanned the screen, jaw tight. The louder they shout, the more scared they are. But the noise had real consequences. A longtime veterinary supplier canceled their contract. The feed store hesitated on credit. Friends Garrett had known since childhood crossed the street rather than wave. That night, Pete spread audit findings across the kitchen table, pages fluttering under the ceiling fan. They've siphoned nearly $2 million from district funds in 5 years. Landscaping for Belle's tennis courts billed as emergency roadwork. Pool chemicals listed as water quality improvements. He stabbed a finger at one spreadsheet. And this security patrol scam? Pure theft. Skylar, hunched over her laptop, looked up with fire in her eyes. "Dad, this isn't just about us anymore. We can blow the lid off every crooked HOA in the county. People need to see this." Garrett looked from his daughter to Pete to Sarah McKenzie, the attorney reviewing case law at the far end of the table, and felt both pride and fear. Pride because his daughter was fearless. Fear because he knew what Belle would do if she felt cornered. The attack came 2 nights later. At 3 a.m., motion sensors triggered along the east fence line. Garrett grabbed his coat, rain boots, and a rifle. Not to use, but to be seen holding in case anyone got ideas. The cameras caught Tucker's lifted pickup idling by the county road, 3 hooded figures cutting wire in the dark. Cattle scattered across Highway 93, horns blaring as cars swerved. By dawn, 40 head had been rounded up, 2 injured, and Garrett staring at $12,000 in emergency costs. But the footage was gold. Clear infrared video of the saboteurs, plus audio. "Make it look like the crazy rancher lost his mind," one voice said. "Belle wants it messy." Garrett replayed the clip in silence. His hand shook once, just once before steadying. Sheriff Collins arrived late that afternoon, grim-faced. "We're charging these kids with criminal mischief and reckless endangerment." But Tucker claims he wasn't there. Garrett leaned against the porch post, rain dripping from his hat brim. His truck's GPS says otherwise. Collins sighed. "Belle's spinning this as proof you're dangerous. She's filing for a restraining order." Skylar stepped forward, voice sharp as broken glass. "Deputy, are you going to protect us, or do we have to do it ourselves?" Collins didn't answer. He didn't have to. That evening, Belle herself appeared on Garrett's property, Range Rover tires sinking into mud, heels slipping as she crossed the pasture. Garrett was mending fence posts when she approached, perfume cutting through the smell of wet earth. "Garrett, we need to talk," she said, voice brittle. "This is getting out of hand. I can make it all go away, 50,000 cash. You drop this legal nonsense. Tucker uses the lake only for personal stuff. Everyone's happy." Garrett didn't stop hammering. "You're offering to bribe me with money you stole from my taxes?" Her composure cracked. "Look, maybe there were accounting errors, but why destroy everyone over a stupid lake?" Garrett turned, sweat streaking mud on his face. "That stupid lake holds my grandmother's ashes. You still don't get what you're stealing." Her eyes flashed, fear, anger, desperation tangled together. "If you push this, you'll regret it. People believe I'm protecting them. You'll be the villain, not me." Garrett let the silence stretch until Belle shifted on her heels. Then he tapped his phone, recording light blinking red. "Thanks for stopping by, Belle. You just gave me everything I needed." She froze, lips parting as the weight of what she'd done sank in. By the time she turned and stalked off through the mud, Garrett knew there was no going back. Belle had declared total war, and tomorrow's county commissioner hearing would decide who survived it. The Cedar Ridge County Commission chamber smelled of old varnish and nervous sweat. Local TV crews set up tripods, reporters flipped open notepads, and neighbors filled every seat, whispering as though they'd wandered into a courtroom instead of a sleepy government meeting. Garrett Holloway sat at the front table with Sarah McKenzie, Pete Morrison, and Skylar on his left, laptop glowing. The evidence lay in neat binders, color-coded tabs like loaded shells. Across the aisle, Belle Thornwick arrived with 3 attorneys from Billings and a face painted into its usual serenity. Tucker lurked 2 rows back, sunglasses indoors, jaw tight. Commissioner Janet Torres rapped the gavel. "We're here to address allegations of financial misconduct within the Cedar Ridge Rural Service District. Mr. Holloway, as district administrator, you have the floor." Garrett stood. No cowboy hat today. Just a weathered rancher's face, eyes steady as the mountains. "For months, I've been harassed on my own land. False complaints, sabotage, lies about my family and my name. But this isn't only about me." He laid a single sheet on the lectern. The 1962 district charter, yellowed but unbroken. "This document makes the Holloway Ranch the anchor parcel, which means every contract for police, fire, utilities, and road services comes through me. And I've been paying 60% of the budget, $200,000 a year, while watching these funds get looted." The first slide clicked on the projector. Charts, invoices, side-by-side photos of subdivision tennis courts labeled as emergency infrastructure. Skylar switched to a second slide. $400,000 billed annually for enhanced security services that didn't exist. Pete's voice cut in from the second microphone. "Market value is $80,000. The rest went to shell companies tied to Belle Thornwick's family." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Belle's lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't speak. "Then there's this." Garrett's voice stayed calm as Skylar cued the footage, Tucker's own Instagram post. The screen filled with his smiling face, bragging about charging $500 a head for exclusive lake access. A second clip followed, him explaining profit margins to a film crew. "Yeah, this is my family's lake. Been coming here since I was a kid." Commissioner Torres leaned forward. "Mr. Thornwick, is this your voice?" Tucker sank lower in his chair. No answer. Garrett didn't smile. They didn't just trespass. They commercialized sacred ground. And when I pushed back, they cut my fences and scattered my cattle on a Highway 93. Sheriff Collins has audio. The room went silent as infrared footage played. Hooded figures snipping wire, voices clear. "Make it look like the crazy rancher lost his mind. Belle wants it messy." Belle's lawyers shifted inconfortably. Belle herself stayed rigid, but a bead of sweat traced down her temple. Sarah McKenzie spoke next, voice sharp as ice. "We've documented $2 million in fraud, intimidation of elderly residents, and falsified police reports. Filing false complaints is a felony in Montana. So is bribery." The final audio file filled the room. Belle's own voice, brittle with panic. "Garrett, $50,000 cash if you drop this. Tucker will only use the lake for personal stuff. We can make it all go away." You could hear the shuffle of bodies, the stunned intake of breath. A man in the back muttered, "She bribed him." Garrett let the silence hang until it felt like the room might crack. "She called it a stupid lake," he said quietly. "But it's where my grandmother's ashes rest. Where 4 generations of Holloways worked this land with their hands. You don't get to steal that." Commissioner Torres' voice was granite. "Mrs. Thornwick, do you wish to respond?" Belle stood, hands trembling despite the practiced smile. "These are misunderstandings. Accounting errors. We never—" "Enough," Torres snapped. "This isn't a trial, but these records will be referred to state and federal authorities immediately. Effective today, all HOA contracts are suspended pending investigation. The chamber erupted, neighbors shouting questions, reporters crowding forward. Belle's lawyers tried to usher her out, but residents blocked the aisle. Margaret Henderson, tears streaking her face, spoke loud enough for cameras to catch. "You lied to us, Belle. You threatened us. You almost ruined our homes." Tucker shoved through the crowd, curses flying as deputies moved in. Sheriff Collins stepped to the microphone. "Arrest warrants are being issued for conspiracy, fraud, and criminal mischief." Garrett didn't cheer. He didn't raise a fist. He simply gathered his papers while Belle's perfect suburban kingdom collapsed around her. For the first time in months, the air felt light. Skylar squeezed his arm as cameras flashed. "You did it, Dad." Garrett looked at her, then at the faces of neighbors, some ashamed, some relieved, and shook his head. "No, Keith, we did it. And now they're going to learn the difference between a rancher defending his land and a bully stealing someone else's." 6 months later, dawn broke over Cedar Ridge the same way it always had. Pale gold spilling across the pastures, cattle shifting in the morning mist, the lake mirroring the sky like a sheet of glass. But for Garrett Holloway, everything felt different. Belle Thornwick was in federal custody, serving an 18-month sentence for fraud and bribery. Tucker's influencer empire had collapsed under IRS scrutiny and felony probation. The cameras that once trailed him now belonged to prosecutors cataloging evidence. The HOA board was dissolved after residents revolted, replacing years of lies with reluctant transparency. Yet Garrett didn't walk around grinning in triumph. Victories like this don't feel like parades. They feel quiet, like the long exhale after a storm. The ranch still bore scars. A burned pasture line where Roman candles once started fire. Fence posts mended with fresh cedar that didn't yet match the old weathered rails. Garrett's name, dragged through mud online, would take time to rinse clean, even though the truth stood on public record. But there were brighter signs, too. The Holloway Accord, drafted by Sarah McKenzie and signed at a packed community meeting, formally recognized Garrett's property rights and placed permanent protections on the lake. What Belle had called a stupid pond was now registered as a conservation site, studied by university programs Skylar herself had helped bring in. The state legislature passed a bill inspired by the case: stronger oversight of service districts, felony penalties for HOA fraud. Pete Morrison, holding a coffee mug on Garrett's porch one evening, shook his head. "You didn't just win, Garrett. You set precedent. Landowners across the state are safer because of you." Garrett stared out at the hills. "Because of us," he said. "Because we kept receipts when everyone else tried to shout louder than the truth." Skylar spent her summer at the ranch, running a journalism project on rural property rights. She'd gone from frightened college kid to relentless investigator, carrying her mother's fire and her father's calm in equal measure. When Garrett saw her teaching visiting students about watershed protection on the lake shore, he felt the Holloway lines stretching unbroken behind him. Ancestors who'd built this place with calloused hands, watching through the wind and the meadowlarks. Not all wounds healed clean. Some neighbors still avoided him, embarrassed they believed Belle's lies. But others came with quiet apologies, dropping off pies, asking how to help mend fence lines. Even the feed store owner who once cut Garrett's credit returned with a handshake, admitting Belle had threatened his bank loan. The ranch felt alive again, but Garrett had changed. He'd spent his life thinking strength meant solitude, that if you worked hard enough, rode long enough, kept your head down, you could outlast any trouble. Belle had taught him otherwise. Some battles weren't about grit. They were about refusing to be silent when silence let thieves rewrite history. On an October evening, with cottonwood leaves rustling like paper, Garrett carried his grandmother's old lantern down to the lake. The water lay black and still under the first stars. He knelt by the smooth stones where her ashes rested, lit the wick, and watched the warm light ripple across the surface. "I kept it safe, Grandma," he murmured. "No one's taking it from us. Not now. Not ever." Skylar appeared behind him, barefoot in the cold grass, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "You okay, Dad?" Garrett smiled faintly. "Better than okay. just thinking how patient this land's been with me. They stood together as the lantern burned low, the ranch settling into evening. Somewhere far off, a meadowlark called. Garrett thought of Belle Thornwick, alone in a cell built from her own arrogance, and felt no glee, only certainty. Some people mistake kindness for weakness. Some people mistake patience for surrender. They never understand that real strength is quiet, rooted deep as bedrock, waiting for the storm to break. When Garrett finally blew out the lantern, the lake mirrored the stars again, unbroken, unspoiled, and his.